The ship came down through the clouds without a sound. It was small and silver, shaped like a teardrop, and it moved through the sky like a ghost. No one on the planet below could see it. The ship was hidden behind a wall of light that bent around it and made it invisible. Inside the ship sat Vila. She was not human. Her skin was pale blue like the color of winter ice. Her eyes were large and silver, and they saw things that human eyes could not see. Her hair was white and long, falling past her shoulders like fresh snow. She was beautiful in a strange way, the way a distant star is beautiful. Vila belonged to a species called the. Her people were old. They had traveled between stars when humans were still living in caves. They had seen empires rise and fall across 1,000 worlds. Now they sat at the head of the Galactic Alliance, a union of intelligent species that stretched across half the galaxy. Vila was an observer. This was her job. She traveled to new worlds and watched the species that lived there. She studied them. She judged them. And then she reported back to the Galactic Council with her decision. Were these beings worthy of joining the Alliance? Did they have the qualities that mattered: honor, wisdom, and strength of spirit? Most species failed her test. They were greedy or cruel or weak. They fought among themselves for foolish reasons. They destroyed their own worlds. Vila had visited 17 species before coming here. Only 3 had earned her approval. Now she had come to observe humanity. Her ship descended toward a small planet at the edge of human space. The planet was called New. It was not important. It was not the center of human civilization. It was just a farming colony, a quiet place where simple people lived simple lives. This was exactly why Vila had chosen it. She did not want to see humanity at its best. She did not want to see their grand cities or their powerful leaders. She wanted to see ordinary humans living ordinary lives. That was how you truly understood a species. Her ship landed on a hill overlooking the main settlement. The colony was small. There were perhaps 5,000 people living there. She could see rows of buildings made from metal and stone. She could see fields of green crops stretching toward the horizon. She could see children playing in the streets and farmers working in the fields. Vila activated her observation screens. Dozens of images appeared before her, showing different parts of the colony. She watched and listened. A woman was singing to her baby. An old man was teaching a young boy how to fix a machine. 2 farmers were arguing about the price of seeds. A group of teenagers were laughing about something she did not understand. Vila watched for 3 days. She saw humans wake up in the morning and go to sleep at night. She saw them eat together and work together and fight with each other over small things. She saw them cry when they were sad and laugh when they were happy. She found them unremarkable. They were not stupid, but they were not brilliant either. They were not evil, but they were not especially good. They were just, ordinary, average, like so many other species she had seen. On the 4th day, Vila began writing her preliminary report. She described the humans as a young species with potential but no exceptional qualities. She noted that they seemed to care for each other, but only within their own small groups. She doubted they would ever amount to anything significant in the galaxy. She was about to recommend that humanity be entry into the Alliance. They simply were not special enough. Then the alarms began. Vila looked up from her report. Red lights were flashing across the colony below. She could hear sirens echoing through the streets. People were running, screaming, pointing at the sky. She turned her screens upward and felt her heart go cold. Ships were coming down through the clouds, not small ships like hers. These were warships, black and ugly, covered in weapons. There were dozens of them, descending toward the colony like a swarm of hungry insects. Vila recognized them immediately. They were raiders. They were a brutal species that lived by stealing from others. They attacked weak colonies, took everything of value, and killed anyone who resisted. The Galactic Alliance had been fighting them for centuries, but they were like weeds. No matter how many you destroyed, more always appeared. And now they had come to new. Vila's first instinct was to leave. This was not her fight. Her mission was to observe, not to interfere. The rules of her order were clear. She was not allowed to help or hurt the species she was watching. She could only watch. But something made her stay. Perhaps it was curiosity. Perhaps it was something else. She wanted to see what the humans would do. The colony had a small defense force. Vila counted 12 soldiers in worn-out armor, carrying weapons that were old and poorly maintained. They gathered in the center of the colony, shouting orders, trying to organize the civilians. One soldier stood out from the others. He was tall, with broad shoulders and a calm face. He did not shout or panic like the others. He moved with purpose, giving clear commands, helping people find shelter. Vila focused her screens on him. His name tag read, he was a sergeant, not a high rank, just a common soldier. But there was something about him that caught her attention, something in his eyes. The ships landed at the edge of the colony. Hundreds of warriors poured out, armed with plasma rifles and energy blades. They were tall and strong, with gray skin and black eyes. They moved forward like a wave, ready to destroy everything in their path. 12 humans against hundreds of. Vila calculated the odds in her mind. The humans had no chance. This battle would be over in minutes. She prepared herself to witness a massacre. But did not run. None of the soldiers ran. They formed a line between the fleeing civilians. They raised their weapons and stood their ground. Vila leaned forward in her chair. For the first time in many years, she felt something she had almost forgotten. Interest. She watched the humans prepare to die, and she wondered why they did not simply surrender. They would probably let them live if they gave up. Fighting was pointless. The math was clear. But the humans did not seem to care about the math. Looked back at the civilians running toward the bunkers. Vila saw his face on her screen. He was afraid. She could see it in his eyes, but he did not move from his position. He turned back toward the enemy and raised his rifle. Vila settled deeper into her chair. Her preliminary report lay forgotten beside her. Perhaps these humans were not so ordinary after all. The first shot came from Minyu. He was a young soldier, barely 22 years old, with a round face and quick hands. He fired his rifle at the advancing and hit one of them square in the chest. The alien stumbled and fell. For a moment there was silence. Then they screamed with rage and charged forward. Vila watched from her ship as the battle began. The 12 human soldiers fired their weapons as fast as they could. Bright flashes of light cut through the air. More fell, 5, then 10, then 20. But there were too many of them. For every one that fell, 3 more took its place. The humans were good fighters. Vila had to admit that. They worked together like parts of a machine. When one soldier ran out of ammunition, another covered for him. When one soldier was wounded, another pulled him to safety. They moved and fought as one unit. But skill alone could not overcome such terrible odds. The first human to die was a woman named. She was providing cover fire for a group of civilians who were running toward the bunkers. A plasma blast caught her in the side. She fell without a sound. Saw her go down and shouted her name, but he could not reach her. They swarmed over her position. Minyu was next. He saw a warrior raising his weapon toward a group of children who had not yet reached safety. Without thinking, he ran toward them. He threw himself between the children and the blast. The plasma hit him in the back. He fell to his knees, but he did not stop. He turned and fired his rifle one last time, killing the who had shot him. Then he collapsed. The children made it to safety. Minyu did not get up. Vila watched his face when he saw his friend fall. Something changed in his eyes. The fear was still there, but now there was something else too. Something harder, something colder. He kept fighting. The battle continued for 20 more minutes. One by one, the human soldiers fell. Died holding a doorway so that civilians could escape through it. Died destroying an enemy transport with a grenade. died carrying a wounded child to the bunkers. Each death bought time, each death saved lives, but each death left fewer soldiers to continue the fight. Vila had seen many battles in her long life. She had watched species fight and die across 100 worlds, but she had never seen anything quite like this. These humans were not fighting to win. They knew they could not win. They were fighting to give their people a chance to escape. It was foolish. It was wasteful. It went against every rule of logic and survival. And yet Vila could not look away. After 1 hour, only 3 soldiers remained, a man named and a woman named. They had fallen back to the entrance of the underground bunker where the civilians were hiding. 300 people were in that bunker. Farmers, workers, children, elderly. The people they had sworn to protect. Took a blast to the leg. He could not walk anymore. He told to leave him and protect the bunker. No, said, we stay together. There is no together anymore, replied. He smiled even though his face was covered in blood. Just go, keep them safe. He pushed away and turned to face the approaching. He fired his weapon until it was empty. Then he pulled out a grenade and waited. When they were close enough, he let it go. The explosion took, and 7 with him. Grabbed arm and pulled him back toward the bunker. They ran together, firing over their shoulders, trying to slow down the enemy advance. They almost made it. A plasma blast hit in the chest. She fell forward into his arms. He caught her and tried to keep running, but she was too heavy. They were getting closer. Put me down, whispered. You have to reach the bunker. I am not leaving you. You have to. She looked up at him with calm eyes. The people in there need you. I am already dead. You know it. I know it. So let me die for something. His jaw tightened. Vila could see the pain on his face, the terrible choice he was being forced to make. He held for a moment longer. Then he gently set her down. Thank you, he said. Go, she replied. Ran. Behind him, he heard his rifle firing one last time. He did not look back. He reached the bunker entrance just as another blast hit him in the shoulder. The impact spun him around and threw him to the ground. His armor cracked. Blood began to pour from the wound. But he did not stay down. He crawled forward, grabbed the edge of the bunker door, and pulled himself up. Inside, he could see hundreds of faces staring at him, afraid, hopeful, waiting. The bunker door was damaged. The control panel was sparking. If went inside and closed the door, it might not hold. They would break through within minutes. Someone had to stay outside. Someone had to slow them down. Vila expected him to go inside. Any rational being would. The odds of survival were better inside. Not good, but better. And surely his duty was done. He had fought well. He had given his people time. No one would blame him for saving himself now. But did not go inside. He turned and looked at the approaching. There were still hundreds of them. They were moving more carefully now, more slowly. The humans had taught them to be afraid. His communication device was broken. He could not call for help. His armor was cracked. His shoulder was bleeding. He had one rifle with half a magazine of ammunition and a pistol with a single clip. He checked his weapons. He looked at the sky, as if hoping to see rescue ships that he knew were not coming. Then he took a deep breath and started walking toward the enemy. Vila's screens flickered. She thought there was a malfunction. Then she realized her hands were shaking. She had observed 17 species across the galaxy. She had seen warriors and heroes and leaders of every kind, but she had never seen anything like this. A single human, wounded and alone, walking toward certain death. Not running away, walking toward it. She opened her communication channel to the Galactic Council. She was supposed to report important events. This qualified. But then she closed it again. She did not want to share this moment, not yet. This was something private, something sacred. She wanted to see what this human would do. The evacuation shuttles were still 40 minutes away. The bunker needed time, and was going to give it to them. even if it killed him. Vila watched him disappear into the smoke and fire, and she felt something she had not felt in a very long time. Respect stopped about 50 meters from the bunker entrance. This was the spot. He could see it clearly now. The road curved here, passing between two burning buildings. Any enemy that wanted to reach the bunker would have to come through this narrow passage. One man could hold this spot, not forever but for a while. He started building. The burning buildings had collapsed into piles of rubble. Metal beams, broken concrete, shattered glass. Grabbed a piece of metal and dragged it across the road. Then another piece. Then another. His shoulder screamed with pain every time he moved, but he did not stop. Vila watched him work. She did not understand what he was doing at first. Then she saw the shape forming. A wall. A barricade. Something to hide behind, something to slow down the enemy advance. It was crude, it was primitive. A warrior would have laughed at it. But built it anyway, because it was all he had. Blood was dripping from his shoulder onto the ground. His face was pale from blood loss. His hands were cut and bleeding from handling the sharp metal, but he kept working. He lifted things that should have been too heavy for a wounded man to lift. He moved faster than he should have been able to move. Vila had studied human biology. She knew about adrenaline, the chemical that their bodies produced in moments of danger. It gave them strength beyond their normal limits. It pushed back pain and exhaustion. It was a survival mechanism designed to help them escape from predators. But was not using it to escape. He was using it to fight. The barricade took shape. It was about chest-high, thick enough to stop plasma blasts with gaps that could shoot through. He tested it, crouching behind it, checking his angles of fire. Then he heard footsteps behind him. He spun around, raising his rifle. A young woman stood there, her hands raised, her eyes wide with fear. "Do not shoot," she said quickly. "It is me." Lowered his weapon. Was a medic, one of the colony's doctors. She was small and thin, with short black hair and gentle eyes. She was carrying a medical bag over her shoulder. "What are you doing out here?" demanded. "Get back to the bunker." "I came to help you." She walked toward him and set down her bag. "Your shoulder needs treatment. Sit down." "There is no time." "Make time." She grabbed his arm and pulled him down. Her hands were shaking, but her voice was firm. "You are bleeding too much. If I do not stop it, you will pass out in 10 minutes. Then you will be no good to anyone." Wanted to argue, but he knew she was right. He let her push him down onto a piece of rubble. She opened her bag and started working on his wound. "The bunker door is damaged," she said as she worked. "We cannot close it properly. Everyone inside is terrified." "I know. They are asking about you, the children especially. They want to know if the soldier is going to save them." Was quiet for a moment. "What did you tell them?" "I told them yes," looked up at him. Her eyes were wet with tears, but she did not cry. "I told them Sergeant would keep them safe, that he would not let the monsters get them." "You should not make promises you cannot keep." "Then keep the promise." She finished bandaging his shoulder and stood up. "Come inside with me. We can seal the door together. We can hide and wait for rescue." "The door will not hold." "It might." "It will not." Stood up and tested his shoulder. The pain was still there, but it was duller now. "The will break through in minutes. Then they will kill everyone inside. Children, there are children in there." "So what are you going to do? Stand out here and die?" "I am going to stand out here and fight." Stared at him. Vila could see the emotions crossing her face. Fear, anger, desperation, and something else, something deeper. "You are one man," whispered. "One wounded man against hundreds." "I know." "You cannot win." "I know." "Then why?" Her voice cracked. "Why will you not come inside? Why will you not save yourself?" Picked up his rifle and checked the ammunition. Half a magazine, maybe 15 shots. He would have to make each one count. "Because they need time," he said quietly. "The evacuation shuttles are coming. I heard the emergency broadcast before my radio died. Help is on the way, but they need 40 minutes, maybe more. You cannot hold for 40 minutes. Maybe not, but I can hold for 10, maybe 15, maybe 20 if I am lucky. He looked at her. Every minute I hold is a minute closer to rescue. Every minute matters. Was crying now. The tears ran down her cheeks, but she did not wipe them away. I do not want you to die, she said. I do not want to die either, smiled. It was a sad smile, but a real one. But I am a soldier. This is what I signed up for. This is what I trained for, protecting people who cannot protect themselves. He walked back to his barricade and crouched behind it. In the distance, he could see movement. They were regrouping, preparing for another assault. Go back to the bunker, he said without turning around. Take care of the wounded. Keep the children calm. When rescue comes, tell them what happened here. Tell them about Minu and all the others. Tell them they died like heroes. What about you? Did not answer. Stood there for a long moment. Then she picked up her medical bag and walked back toward the bunker. At the entrance, she turned and looked back at him one more time. Vila could see her face on the screen. The medic's expression was strange. It was not just sadness or fear anymore. It was something like awe. Then disappeared into the bunker and was alone. He settled into position behind his barricade. He checked his weapons one more time. He looked up at the sky where dark clouds were gathering. A storm was coming. He smiled. All right, he said to himself. Let us see how many of you I can take with me. Vila ran the calculations again. She analyzed the terrain, the enemy numbers, weapons, and physical condition. She computed every possible variable. His odds of survival were 0.003%, effectively zero. He would die here, there was no question about that. But as Vila watched him prepare for his final battle, she found herself hoping that she was wrong. For the first time in her long life, she wanted her calculations to be mistaken. She wanted this human to live. The first appeared at the end of the road, then another, they were coming. Took a deep breath, raised his rifle and waited. The storm broke overhead and the rain began to fall. They came laughing. Vila could hear them through her audio sensors. They were making jokes in their rough language. Jokes about the dead humans. Jokes about the pathetic colony. Jokes about the lone soldier who was foolish enough to stand against them. 30 warriors walked down the road towards barricade. They were tall and muscular, with gray skin that was tough like leather. Their black eyes showed no fear, no mercy, no doubt. They had killed thousands of beings across dozens of worlds. One wounded human was nothing to them. Their leader was a warrior named. He was larger than the others, with scars covering his face and arms. He carried a plasma cannon that could burn through steel. He had personally killed 2 of the human soldiers earlier in the battle. Raised his hand and they stopped. They were about 80 meters from the barricade. They could see crouching there, his rifle pointed toward them. They laughed again. Look at this, said. The little human wants to play hero. Should we go around him? One of the warriors asked. Why bother? There are 30 of us and one of him. We will walk over his body and take the bunker. They spread out into a loose formation and began walking forward again. They did not hurry. They did not take cover. They simply walked, confident in their numbers and their strength. Did not move. He watched them through the scope of his rifle. He was counting them, measuring the distance, calculating angles. Vila zoomed her screen closer on his face. His eyes were calm. His breathing was steady. The fear she had seen earlier was gone. In its place was something cold and focused. He was not thinking about death anymore. He was thinking about the battle. They reached 60 meters, then 50, then 40. Smiled, the human was frozen with fear. This would be easy. Fired. The first shot hit the warrior on the far left. The second shot hit the warrior on the far right. The third and fourth shots hit 2 more on the edges of the formation. 4 fell before the others understood what was happening. Was not shooting at random. He was shooting at the edges first, cutting off the warriors who might try to flank him. He was controlling the battlefield, forcing them into a narrow killing zone. They reacted with rage. They screamed and charged forward, firing their weapons wildly. Plasma blasts scorched the air around the barricade. One blast hit the metal wall and melted a hole through it, but was already moving. He rolled to the side, came up behind a different part of the barricade and fired again. 2 more fell. "Spread out," roared, "surround him." The warriors tried to obey, but the burning buildings on either side of the road blocked their path. They could not go left. They could not go right. They had to come straight ahead. Right into his guns. Vila watched in amazement. The human had chosen this spot carefully. He had seen what she had not. The terrain favored a defender. The narrow road, the burning buildings, the rubble that slowed movement, all of it worked against the. Was not fighting with strength. He was fighting with intelligence. His rifle clicked empty. 15 shots, 8 kills. He dropped it and pulled out his pistol. The weapon was smaller, weaker, but at close range it would still do damage. They were closer now, 20 meters. They were starting to take cover behind rubble, learning from their dead companions. They were not laughing anymore. Ducked behind his barricade as plasma blasts flew over his head. He could hear them shouting to each other, coordinating their movements. They were going to rush him all at once. He looked around, saw a piece of metal pipe lying nearby, picked it up. They charged. They came in a wave, 10 warriors running at full speed, screaming their battle cries. They expected to overwhelm him with numbers. They expected him to panic. Through the metal pipe. It was not a weapon. It was a distraction. The pipe flew through the air and hit one of the charging warriors in the helmet. The impact was not hard enough to hurt him, but it surprised him. He stumbled. The warrior behind him crashed into his back. They both fell. 2 more tripped over them. The charge broke apart into chaos. Stood up and fired. At this range he could not miss. 1 shot, 2 shots, 3 shots, 4 shots. 4 more fell. He was empty again. No more ammunition for the pistol. He dropped it and grabbed a piece of rubble. A warrior reached the barricade and swung his energy blade, ducked under the swing and smashed the rubble into the warrior's face. The alien fell back with a broken nose. Another warrior came at him, grabbed the fallen blade and drove it into the warrior's chest. A third warrior tackled him from behind. They rolled across the ground, punching and clawing at each other. Got his hand around a rock and hit the warrior in the temple. Once, twice, 3 times the went limp. He pushed the body off and staggered to his feet. His bandage had come loose. Blood was pouring from his shoulder again. His whole body was screaming with pain. He looked around at the battlefield. Bodies were everywhere. Bodies, 12 of them, maybe more. The surviving warriors had fallen back. They were standing at the end of the road, staring at him with something new in their black eyes. Fear was still alive. His plasma cannon had jammed during the charge. He was watching with a mixture of rage and confusion. "What are you?" he demanded. Did not answer. He picked up a fallen rifle and checked its power cell. Half charged, good enough. "You should have run," said. "You could have lived." "So could you," replied. He raised the alien rifle and took aim. Snarled an order and the surviving retreated. They disappeared around the corner, leaving their dead behind. Lowered the weapon. His hands were shaking now. The adrenaline was fatting and the pain was coming back. He leaned against his barricade and tried to catch his breath. The first wave was over. He had won. But he knew it was not finished. They would come back. They would come back with more warriors and better tactics, and he had almost nothing left to fight with. He looked at the sky. The rain was still falling. The clouds were dark and heavy. How long had it been? 10 minutes, 15. He did not know. The evacuation shuttles were still far away. He could feel it in his bones. He had to hold longer. Vila leaned back in her chair. Her silver eyes were wide. Her hands were still trembling. She had watched countless battles. She had seen the greatest warriors of 100 species fight and die, but she had never seen anything like this. One human, wounded, alone, fighting with intelligence and courage beyond anything she had expected. Something was stirring in her chest, an emotion she had not felt in centuries. She did not have a name for it. But she knew one thing for certain: she could not look away. She had to see how this ended. The commander was named. He was old for his kind, with white scars crossing his face like a map of all the wars he had survived. He stood in his command ship, watching the images from the battlefield below. 12 warriors dead, killed by a single human. His officers stood behind him, silent and afraid. They had never seen their commander this angry. His hands were clenched so tight that his claws were cutting into his palms. "Send the second wave," said quietly. 50 warriors, heavy armor, plasma cannons. "Commander," one officer said carefully, "perhaps we should simply bombard the area from orbit. We do not need to." "We need to teach them a lesson," turned to face his officer. His black eyes burned with fury. "One human has killed 12 of our warriors. If we run from him, if we destroy him from a distance like cowards, the story will spread. Other species will hear about it. They will think we are weak." He turned back to the screen. The human was still there, crouching behind his barricade, waiting. "No," said, "we will kill him face to face. We will make him suffer. And then we will kill everyone in that bunker slowly while they watch. That will be the story that spreads. That will be the lesson." He waved his hand. "Send the second wave now." Heard them coming before he saw them. The ground was shaking. Heavy footsteps, many of them marching in formation. He peered over his barricade and felt his heart sink. 50 warriors were coming down the road. These were not like the first wave. These wore thick armor that covered their entire bodies. They carried plasma cannons instead of rifles, and they were not laughing or joking. They were silent and disciplined. Behind them came 2 heavy weapons platforms, mobile cannons on wheels, powerful enough to destroy buildings. Looked at his stolen rifle, half a charge, maybe 20 shots if he was careful. 20 shots against 50 armored warriors and heavy cannons. He almost laughed. The odds had been bad before, now they were impossible. But he did not run. He could not run. Behind him, 300 people were counting on him. Children were counting on him. Words echoed in his mind. "I told them Sergeant would keep them safe." He checked his rifle and settled into position. They advanced slowly. They were careful now, using cover, keeping their formation tight. They had learned from the first wave. They would not make the same mistakes. Waited until they were 40 meters away. Then he fired. The first shot hit a warrior in the gap between helmet and chest plate. Lucky shot. The warrior fell. The others immediately dropped to cover and returned fire. Plasma blasts pounded its barricade. The metal was melting. Soon there would be nothing left to hide behind. He could not win a firefight. Not against these numbers, not against this firepower. He needed a different approach. He looked at the burning building to his left. It was a storage warehouse, 4 stories tall. The fire had weakened its structure. The walls were cracking, the roof was sagging. One good hit would bring it down. Aimed at the building's support beam, he fired twice. The beam cracked but did not break. Plasma blasts hit the ground around him. One grazed his leg. He felt the searing pain but ignored it. He fired again. The beam shattered. For a moment nothing happened. Then the building groaned. The walls began to tilt. The roof collapsed inward. And then the whole structure came crashing down, right onto the advancing formation. The sound was like thunder. Dust and debris exploded outward. Screams echoed through the air. Did not wait to see the damage. He was already moving, running to a new position behind a pile of rubble. He had maybe 2 minutes before the surviving recovered. Inside the bunker, the civilians felt the ground shake. Dust fell from the ceiling. Children screamed and clutched their parents. Was kneeling beside a wounded man, bandaging his arm. She looked up at the ceiling, her eyes wide. "What was that?" someone asked. "The soldier," an old woman whispered. "The soldier is still fighting." The civilians gathered near the damaged door. Through the cracks, they could see glimpses of the battle outside. Smoke and fire, flashes of light, the distant sound of weapons. A little girl tugged at sleeve. "Is he winning?" Did not know what to say. She looked through the crack in the door and saw he was covered in blood and dust. He was limping badly. His armor was cracked and broken. But he was still fighting. "Yes," said quietly, "he is winning." The surviving were furious. 15 of them had died in the building collapse. Another 10 were wounded. They regrouped and advanced again, more careful than ever. Fired at them from his new position. He hit 2 more before they located him. Then plasma blasts forced him to move again. He was running out of places to hide, running out of ammunition, running out of strength. His leg wound was bleeding badly. His shoulder wound had opened again. Every breath hurt. Every step was agony. But he kept moving, kept fighting, kept buying time. He set a trap using fuel canisters from a destroyed vehicle. When they walked over them, he shot the canisters. The explosion killed 3 more warriors. He found a high position in a ruined building and picked off 4 more before they spotted him. Then he had to jump from a 2nd-story window to escape. He landed badly and felt something crack in his ankle. He crawled to new cover and kept shooting. The heavy weapons platforms finally rolled into position. They opened fire on the ruins where was hiding. The first blast missed. The second hit the wall above his head, showering him with debris. He rolled out of cover and fired at the platform's operator. Missed, fired again, hit. The operator fell and the platform went silent. The other platform turned toward him. Tried to run, but his ankle would not support him. He fell. The platform's weapon charged, glowing bright orange. He was going to die. Then the platform exploded. Stared in confusion. He had not done that. He looked around, trying to understand what had happened. Then he saw it. One of the warriors had accidentally shot his own platform while trying to hit. The warrior was staring at the burning wreckage in horror. Did not waste the moment. He grabbed a fallen weapon and fired at the distracted warrior, then at the next one, then at the next. Chaos spread through the ranks. They were shooting at shadows now, at each other, at anything that moved. The discipline that had made them dangerous was breaking down. Press the attack. He limped forward, firing and moving, using their confusion against them. When his weapon ran empty, he threw it at a warrior's face and grabbed another. When that one ran empty, he fought with his hands, with rocks, with anything he could find. The broke. They turned and ran, leaving their dead and wounded behind. They fled back toward their ships, away from this monster in human form who would not stop, would not fall, would not die. Watched them go. He tried to stand, but his legs gave out. He collapsed onto the wet ground, gasping for breath. 2 hours had passed. He had held for 2 hours. The evacuation shuttles were still 20 minutes away. He had to hold longer, but he had nothing left. No weapons, no strength, no plan. He lay there in the rain, watching the sky, wondering if this was how it ended. Then he heard Heard's voice calling his name, ran to him through the rain. She dropped to her knees beside him and pressed her hands against his wounds. There was so much blood, too much blood. "You idiot," she whispered. "You stubborn, stupid idiot." Coughed and tried to smile. "Is everyone okay, the bunker?" "Everyone is fine. They are all watching. They saw what you did." She was crying again, but she did not stop working. Her hands moved quickly, applying pressure, wrapping bandages. You held them off. You actually held them off. How much longer until the shuttles arrive? Maybe 15 minutes, maybe 20. She looked at his wounds and shook her head. You cannot fight anymore. You have lost too much blood. Your body is failing. Then help me stand. What? Help me stand. He grabbed her arm and pulled himself up. Pain shot through his entire body. He nearly screamed, but he held it inside. I can still hold a weapon. I can still aim. You can barely breathe. I only need to breathe for 15 more minutes. He stood there, swaying on his broken ankle, leaning on for support. He looked toward the road where they had retreated. They would come back. He knew they would. They had too much pride to let a single human defeat them. Helped him to the barricade. It was barely standing now, melted and broken from plasma fire, but it was still something, still cover. Sat down with his back against it. Handed him a weapon she had taken from a dead. He checked the charge, almost empty, a few shots at most. Go back to the bunker, he said. No. I said no. She sat down beside him. I am not leaving you here alone. If you are going to die, you are not going to die alone. Looked at her. This small, gentle woman who had never held a weapon in her life. She was terrified. He could see it in her eyes, but she was not running. You are as stubborn as I am, he said. Someone has to be. She took his hand. Rest for a moment, save your strength. I will watch for them. He wanted to argue, but his body was too tired. His eyes were too heavy. He let himself lean against the barricade and close his eyes, just for a moment, just to rest. Vila watched from her ship. Her screens showed everything. The wounded human, the brave medic, the civilians watching from the bunker, the regrouping in the distance. She had never felt like this before. Her hearts were beating fast. Her hands were trembling. She wanted to help. She wanted to descend from her ship and save them. But the rules of her order were absolute. She could not interfere. She could only watch. She hated those rules now. Commander marched toward the barricade personally. He had gathered his remaining warriors, 30 of them, the last of his ground forces. He walked at their front, his heavy boots splashing through the blood-stained puddles. He had watched the battle from his ship. He had seen this human kill nearly 100 of his warriors. One man, one wounded, bleeding, broken man. It was impossible. It was humiliating. It was the greatest defeat of his career. But it would end now. The human was finished. Could see him slumped against the barricade, barely conscious. The medic beside him was no threat. This would be easy. They would suffer, both of them, would make sure of that. Opened his eyes when he heard the footsteps. He saw the commander approaching, saw the warriors behind him. Too many, far too many. He tried to lift his weapon, but his arms would not obey. He could barely move. Stood up and put herself between and the approaching enemy. She had no weapon. She had no training. But she stood there anyway, her small body blocking their path. Move, little one, said. My business is with the soldier, not with you. No. Laughed. It was an ugly sound. Such courage, such foolishness, I almost respect it. He gestured to his warriors. Take her, make her watch what we do to him. 2 warriors moved forward, did not run. She stood her ground. Then spoke. Wait. Stopped. He looked at the human with curiosity. Pushed himself up. Every muscle screamed in protest. Every nerve burned with pain, but he stood. He took one step forward, then another. He positioned himself in front of. Your fight is with me, said. His voice was barely a whisper. Leave her alone. Leave them all alone. You want revenge, take it, kill me, but let the others go. Studied him. The human was barely alive. His body was covered in wounds. He could not even hold his weapon properly. And yet he was still trying to negotiate, still trying to protect others. Why? Asked. Why do you care about these people? They are strangers, farmers, nobodies. They are not worth dying for. Smiled. Blood dripped from his lips. They are not strangers, he said. They are my people." He raised his weapon. His hand was shaking so badly that he could barely aim, but he aimed anyway. "And I will die before I let you touch them." His face twisted with rage. He raised his own weapon. "Then die." Fired first. The blast caught in the shoulder, not a killing shot, was too weak for accuracy, but it was enough to make the commander stagger back. Recovered and aimed its head. Then the sky exploded with light. Ships came screaming down through the clouds. Not ships, human ships, military ships, dozens of them, weapons blazing. The evacuation shuttles had arrived, and they had brought reinforcements. Plasma fire rained down on the warriors. They scattered, screaming, diving for cover that did not exist, looked up at the sky in disbelief. "Impossible," he whispered. "The distress signal was blocked. How?" He never finished the sentence. A blast from one of the ships hit him square in the chest. He fell and did not get up. The surviving fled. They ran for their landing ships, desperate to escape the human counterattack. But the human ships were faster. One by one, the transports were destroyed before they could reach orbit. It was over in minutes. The invasion was finished. Watched the human ships descend. He watched the soldiers pour out, securing the area. He watched the civilians emerge from the bunker, crying and laughing and hugging each other. Was saying something to him. He could not hear her. The world was getting dark around the edges. His legs were giving out. But he had done it. He had held the line. He had kept his promise. The children were safe. Smiled one last time. Then his eyes closed and he fell. Screamed his name. She caught him before he hit the ground. She held him in her arms, shouting for medics, shouting for help. The rescue teams came running. They lifted onto a stretcher and rushed him toward a medical shuttle. Ran beside him, holding his hand, refusing to let go. Vila watched all of this. She watched the human soldiers tend to their wounded hero. She watched the civilians gather around, speaking his name with reverence. Tears were running down her pale blue cheeks. She did not know when she had started crying. She did not care. She had observed 1,000 warriors across 1,000 worlds. She had seen strength and courage in many forms. But she had never seen anything like this. She had never seen anyone like him. And in that moment, watching the medics fight to save his life, Vila made a decision. She would not leave this world, not yet. She had to know if he survived. She had to see him again. She had to understand why one wounded human had changed everything she believed about the universe. 3 days passed. Lay in a medical pod in the colony's emergency hospital. The machines around him beeped and hummed, keeping him alive. Doctors came and went, checking his vital signs, adjusting his treatment. He was alive, barely. His body had suffered terrible damage. He had lost more blood than any human should be able to lose and survive. His bones were cracked, his organs were bruised, his muscles were torn. The doctors said it was a miracle he was still breathing. They called him a hero. The story of his stand had spread across the colony, across the planet, across the entire human communication network. News channels were already broadcasting reports about the sergeant who had held off 100 alone. But did not hear any of it. He was deep in a healing sleep, his mind wandering through dreams of fire and blood and rain. Stayed by his side every day. She slept in a chair next to his pod. She talked to him even though he could not hear her. She told him stories about the people he had saved, about the children who were asking about him, about the old woman who had started calling him a guardian angel. "You did it," she whispered to him one night. "You kept your promise. Everyone is safe because of you." She held his hand through the glass of the pod. It was cold and still, but she did not let go. Outside the hospital, the colony was rebuilding. The fires had been put out. The rubble was being cleared. The dead were being buried with honor. Life was returning to normal. But nothing was really normal. Everyone knew that. Something had changed during the battle. Something had been revealed. The people of Nu had seen what a human could do when pushed to the limit. They had seen sacrifice and courage and love in its form, and they would never forget it. On the fourth day, something strange happened. A silver ship descended from the clouds and landed in the middle of the colony. It was small and elegant, shaped like a teardrop. No one had ever seen anything like it before. The people gathered around it, curious and afraid. The human soldiers raised their weapons, unsure if this was another attack. Then the ship opened, and Vila stepped out. She was tall and graceful, with pale blue skin and silver eyes. Her white hair flowed behind her like water. She moved with a calm confidence that made everyone fall silent. She was the most beautiful being any of them had ever seen, and she was clearly not human. The soldiers surrounded her, demanding to know who she was and what she wanted. Vila ignored them. She walked through the crowd as if they were not there, her eyes fixed on the hospital in the distance. One soldier stepped in front of her, blocking her path. "Stop right there. You are not authorized to." Vila looked at him, just looked. The soldier felt something he could not describe, a presence, a weight, the sense that he was standing before a being far older and wiser than anything he could imagine. He stepped aside without another word. Vila walked into the hospital. The doctors and nurses stared at her in shock. She did not explain herself. She simply walked through the corridors until she found what she was looking for. Room was there as always. She jumped to her feet when Vila entered, her eyes wide with fear. "Who are you?" she demanded. "What do you want?" Vila did not answer. She walked to the medical pod and looked down its face. He was pale and still, covered in bandages. The machines showed his heartbeat, slow but steady. She reached out and placed her hand against the glass. "I watched you," she said softly. "I watched you fight alone against impossible odds. I watched you refuse to run, refuse to surrender, refuse to die." Was confused. "You watched? What do you mean? Who are you?" Vila turned to look at her. "I am an observer. I was sent by the Galactic Alliance to evaluate your species, to decide if humanity was worthy of joining us." His mouth fell open. She had heard stories about the Alliance, about the ancient species that ruled the stars, but she had never believed they were real. "You have been watching us this whole time." "Yes," Vila turned back to. "I have watched many species across many worlds. I have seen warriors and kings and leaders of every kind, but I have never seen anyone like him." She was quiet for a moment, then she continued. "My people have a word. It means the fire that burns inside a living soul, the thing that makes you fight when you should surrender, the thing that makes you stand when you should fall." She touched the glass gently, almost lovingly. "We thought we had lost our long ago. We became too old, too wise, too careful. We forgot what it meant to feel truly alive." Vila looked at. Her silver eyes were shining with tears. "This human reminded me. He showed me what we have lost, what we need to find again." A communication device on Vila's wrist began to glow. She touched it, and a voice spoke. It was deep and ancient, the voice of Elder from the Galactic Council. "Observer Vila, we have been waiting for your report. What is your assessment of humanity?" Vila was silent for a long moment. She looked at his face, at his still hands, at the steady rise and fall of his chest. She thought about everything she had seen, the fear and the courage, the pain and the determination, the simple sergeant who had given everything to protect strangers he called his people. "They are worthy," she said, "more than worthy. Humanity possesses something rare and precious, something the Alliance needs." "And what is that?" Elder asked. "Hard." There was a long silence. Then the Elder spoke again. "Very well. We will begin the process of contact and invitation. Your mission is complete. You may return home." Vila touched the device again, ending the communication. But she did not move toward the door. She did not walk back to her ship. She stayed where she was, standing beside bed. Watched her carefully. Are you not leaving? No. Why not? Vila was quiet for a moment. Then she spoke and her voice was soft, almost shy. Because I choose him. Did not understand. Choose him for what? For myself. Vila sat down in the chair beside the pod. Her silver eyes never left his face. My people believe in bonds, connections between souls that transcend distance and time. I felt that connection when I watched him fight. I felt something I have not felt in 500 years. She folded her hands in her lap and settled back into the chair. I will wait for him to wake. I will stay by his side, and I will spend the rest of my life learning what it means to have a heart like his. Did not know what to say. She looked at this alien woman, this ancient being from the stars, and saw something unexpected in her eyes. Hope, wonder, love. He might not feel the same way, said quietly. He might not understand. Perhaps, Vila smiled. It was a small smile, gentle and patient. But that is a risk I am willing to take. He taught me that some things are worth the risk. She reached out and touched the glass again. Wake up, she whispered. There is so much I want to tell you, so much I want to learn from you. The machines beeped steadily. The sun set outside the window. The stars came out, one by one, filling the sky with ancient light. Vila waited. And somewhere deep in his dreams, began to find his way back to the waking world. He would wake soon, and when he did, everything would be different. The galaxy was watching now. Humanity had proven itself, and one simple soldier had changed the fate of his entire species without ever knowing it. But for Vila, the politics and the alliances did not matter. Only one thing mattered. She had found something she thought she would never find again. She had found someone worth believing in. And she would never let him go.